Welcome to the Hindi News Analysis by Shankar IAS Academy. The list of topics chosen for today's discussion, along with the page numbers, is given here for your reference. Today's discussion is going to be mainly centered around science and technology topics. We will try to keep the discussion as interesting as possible. Here is the first news article. This news article is about the recently launched NASA's SpaceX Crew-1 mission. In this context, let us understand the significance of this mission and what Indian Space Agency can learn from America's space missions. The relevant syllabus is given here for your reference. First, let us understand NASA's Commercial Crew program. See, under this program, NASA is working with American aerospace industry to develop and operate a new generation of spacecraft and launch systems capable of carrying crews to low Earth orbit and International Space Station. See, unlike in India, in US, the private aerospace industry is mostly developed. So, NASA is outsourcing some of its works to private companies. For example, in today's case, SpaceX rockets were used to send crew to International Space Station. So, the most important outcome is, this is the first NASA certified commercial human spacecraft system in history. Don't be confused here. We are not saying this is the first human spacecraft system. This is first commercial human spacecraft system, which means until now all the human spacecraft missions were taken over by government. For example, all the spacecraft missions including Apollo were done by NASA, which is a government agency. But in today's example, NASA's astronauts left to space in a private vehicle, that is a commercial vehicle, which is developed by SpaceX. So, Crew-1 is the first of 6 crewed missions of NASA and SpaceX under Commercial Crew program. This mission has several firsts. It is the first flight of NASA certified commercial system designed for crew transportation, that is, crew means astronauts, which moves the system from development into regular flights. So far, SpaceX has proved its ability to send people to space. Now that with the launch of NASA's astronauts, the system is fully usable now. It is also the first time in Federal Aviation Administration has licensed a human orbital spaceflight launch. So which means the Federal Aviation of US gave permission to launch a human orbital spaceflight to a private company. See, most of us have heard about SpaceX. SpaceX is a aerospace private company. So this company designs, manufactures and launches the world's most advanced rockets and spacecrafts. So this company was founded in 2002 by Elon Musk with an aim to revolutionize space transportation with the ultimate goal of making life multi-planetary. Since then, SpaceX has gained worldwide attention for a series of historic milestones. See, company was founded in 2002. Within 18 years, the company has achieved lot of progress. And most of us have heard about this name called Elon Musk. If you watch Iron Man movies, Elon Musk is called the real life Tony Stark. As of now, it is the only private company ever to return a spacecraft from low Earth orbit. It means after delivering the astronauts into space station, the spacecraft came back to the Earth. Generally, after launching of the spacecrafts, they will destroy in the atmosphere after the purpose is done. But SpaceX is working for reusable launch vehicles. In 2012, its Dragon spacecraft attached to ISS exchanged cargo payloads and returned safely to Earth. We will try to show that video. Even though many governments and many private companies try to launch a perfect reusable vehicle, they are mostly in development stage. Even NASA tried with Space Shuttle, but it resulted in 2 major failures and death of many astronauts. So at this moment, we can conveniently say that SpaceX is the only agency which is having perfectly reusable launch vehicles. And most recently, 2 NASA astronauts were taken to ISS by this Dragon spacecraft. This is very significant as it marked the start of new age in commercial space travel. Now that as private companies are able to send humans to space and that too with relaunchable vehicles, so many experts are saying that the commercial space travel is going to be very soon. As if now we are buying airplane tickets, in the future we can definitely buy tickets to Mars, Moon, etc. And not just that, SpaceX has also launched more than 950 Starlink satellites. This Starlink program, again this program is very famous in the last 1 or 2 years. The aim of this program is to provide internet services that link any point on earth to any other point. See, most of us know the internet speeds are very low in remote areas and villages, etc. But we can say that internet speeds in cities is pretty good. Again, I am not generalizing. Yes, even people in cities also are facing issues with internet speeds. So the Starlink program aims to send some thousands of satellites, and all these satellites will be in lower Earth orbit. So through this satellite, internet can be provided in any part of the world. So now we are having this DTH services, wherein we will keep an antenna above our house, from where we will get TV services. With the same technology, the Starlink program is going to provide internet from satellite. So DTH is not just for TVs. In the future, we are going to get direct to home internet from satellites. So we can say that with its latest technologies, SpaceX has revolutionized the space sector. This privatization of space sector shall be a lesson for many countries including India. The successful NASA SpaceX missions shows that public-private partnerships are a key component to driving innovation in space sector. With the potential to address a wide array of modern challenges from technology development to infrastructure modernization and from education to the economic development of space, public-private partnership will unlock new possibilities which are currently unavailable due to over-dependence on either public or private investment. So we can say that public-private partnership in space industry will pave for new future of space in India. And we all know that in the last 2 years, government has started a new entity called New Space India Limited, which is trying to develop private space industry. And we are also looking forward to private participation in space sector through Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So as a part of this, private companies to be provided level playing field in satellites, launches and space-based services. Apart from these, for future projects for planetary exploration, outer space travel will be open for private sector. Also, private sector will be allowed to use ISRO facilities and other relevant assets to improve their capacities. But for India, it is a very long distance to achieve what NASA and SpaceX has done in the recent years. It is also said that NASA-SpaceX collaboration is also opening space tourism. Space could become more common as space travel becomes less expensive. At present, there are several companies such as Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, SpaceX working to offer space flights. So let us all hope that human spaceflight missions will be very common in the coming days and India will be a leading player. And I also hope that some of us will travel to space in these commercial flight missions. And before ending, this Elon Musk, a great visionary, is also the founder of Tesla. Yes, Tesla, which manufactures electric vehicles, is also owned by Elon Musk. So this is all about the discussion of this news article wherein we have talked about the public-private partnership in America in space sector and what India can learn from SpaceX achievements. Let us move on to next news article discussion. This news article talks about a new technology for diagnosing COVID-19 called as RT-LAMP or RT-LAMP. See, we have seen that during COVID period, countries have employed combinations of containment and mitigation activities to fight the infection. And testing is a vital component in mitigation because early diagnosis of virus is crucial in controlling the spread of virus from infected person to other person. So there is a need for rapid point of care diagnostic tools. Already RT-PCR is being used for coronavirus diagnosis. So in today's analysis, we are going to discuss a new method called RT-LAMP and how it is superior compared to RT-PCR. The relevant syllabus is given here for your reference. See, as we all know, RT-PCR stands for Reverse Transcription Polymerase Chain Reaction. So what is this reverse transcription? See, coronavirus is a RNA virus. The process of converting RNA into DNA through an enzyme called reverse transcriptase is called reverse transcription. Simply put, we are converting RNA into DNA. So this RT-PCR is a laboratory method used to make many copies of a specific genetic sequence for analysis. So simply just understand that polymerase chain reaction PCR produces numerous copies, that is amplification of a gene or a series of genetic sequences. So we are taking small part of DNA and we are amplifying it into multiple copies for laboratory study. So this procedure will be done after conversion of coronavirus RNA into DNA by reverse transcription, as we said before. But there are many shortcomings in this method, particularly in the current hard times. See, firstly, the problem with RT-PCR is it requires various specialist, highly trained lab professional and expensive equipment. This is because RT-PCR test needs different temperatures in one cycle. So to change the temperature frequently, we need expensive thermal equipment and real-time PCR machines also needed. Here note that in each cycle, the number of DNA molecules doubles and the fluorescent level is measured. So based on this fluorescent level, the presence of virus is known. Simply put, in RT-PCR, virus RNA is converted into DNA and this DNA is amplified into multiple copies and repeated through multiple cycles at different temperatures. This will result in doubling of DNA molecules through which fluorescent level is measured. Fluorescent level means how much light it is emitting out after subjecting it to light. So based on this fluorescent level only, we are identifying the virus. This is simply RT-PCR. Here real-time PCR components are mostly imported. So automatically the price will be higher. Additionally, PCR based reagents, that is some chemicals we use, are to be stored and transported at minus 20 degrees centigrade. So again we need some special refrigerators to keep this. So because of these reasons, the cost of RT-PCR is very high. Even the government has limited the cost to 1000 rupees. We have seen many labs are charging more than that. Secondly, specificity and sensitivity of the test is only 95%. So for every 100 tests, there is a chance of error in 5 tests. And thirdly, it requires more than 4 to 8 hours to process the test. So total time will be around 10 hours. In short, if we give the sample today, mostly we will get the result only tomorrow. And if you are living in a remote place, it will take even more time to get the result. And fourthly, it results in financial pressures because the requisite facilities and resources to perform such RT-PCR tests will be mostly in cities. Only then it will be economically viable for the labs to invest in RT-PCR mechanisms. So these high-end labs cannot be deployed at remote locations, quarantine centers, airports. We cannot do it. So the samples are to be taken from one place and to be sent very far to get the result. So this in turn may result in further increase in the required time and financial pressure to perform the diagnostic tests. So according to experts, RT-PCR, that is reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, does not have the capacity to keep pace with the increasing demand. So suddenly if you want to conduct 5 million tests tomorrow, it cannot be easily done. So this is where the RT-LAMP comes into picture. Here LAMP stands for loop mediated isothermal amplification. Similar to RT-PCR, the test is carried out from nasal or throat swab sample from the patients. Similar to RT-PCR, in this method also, RNA is first made into cDNA, that is copy DNA, by the usual reverse transcription. But in the RT-LAMP, instead of PCR, we are using LAMP technique for amplification of DNA. That is, for generating multiple copies of DNA, we are using LAMP technique here. Though the technical details regarding LAMP is not required, so we are keeping it away. Know that this method induces a strong colorimetric reaction. That is, a colored reaction as the end detection of the test. So at the end of test, depending on the color of the sample or the reagents, we will say that this person is positive or this person is negative. So what are its advantages? See, these LAMP procedures are significantly rapid. It takes only 45 to 60 minutes. So after giving sample, within 1 hour we can get the result. Next, they do not require expensive chemicals or instruments. See, in this LAMP technique, after conversion of RNA into DNA, during the amplification, that is creating multiple copies of DNA, only a single temperature around 60 degrees centigrade is used. But in PCR, we need 3 to 4 different temperatures to conduct one test. So because of this constant temperature only, we call it as isothermal method. Isothermal means constant temperature. If you are from mechanical background in engineering, you will know this. So the expensive thermal cycler, that is thermal equipment to create multiple temperatures, is not required in RT-LAMP technique. Further, we said that this LAMP technique provides a colored reaction. So this LAMP based diagnostics do not require expensive detection instruments, that is fluorescent level and all not required in LAMP techniques. Moreover, RT-LAMP test can be done in a single tube with minimum expertise. That too in a very basic lab we can do this. So we can set up this center in airports, railway stations, bus stands, and within 1 hour before the travel of people, we can do the test. And for the same reason, we can set up even this technique in rural areas also. Additionally, the chemicals or reagents can be stored at 4 degrees centigrade. So a normal fridge is enough. Unlike in RT-PCR, we have to store them in minus 20 degrees centigrade. So we need some special thermal equipments. So these features aid in cost reduction of this test. It is expected that the test cost could be somewhere between 100 to 200. Another advantage is that RT lamp based COVID-19 kits are easily available and these can be completely manufactured in India. So the process of importing will also be removed. More importantly, RT lamp has 100% specificity, that is 100% accuracy. But in RT-PCR it is only 95%. So lamp technology is superior to PCR technology based COVID-19 kits. So on a whole, we can say that RT lamp is rapid, cost-effective, accurate test and user-friendly molecular diagnostic tool. All these features make it ideal diagnosing tool for Indian conditions. Though people are saying that vaccine will come in few months, but the testing of virus should be continued to recognize second wave, third waves. So a cheap and efficient testing procedure is definitely a positive thing in mitigation of COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is all about the discussion of this news article. Let us move on to next news article discussion. Let us take up this news article from FAQ column. It talks about the science behind forecasting cyclones in Indian Ocean. See, we had elaborately discussed cyclones, their formation and how cyclones are named in last week's news analysis. So today we will focus on cyclone warning or forecast system as mentioned in today's news article. So you will be surprised how this news article will be important in exam perspective. See, sometimes we'll get questions on disaster management and some science and technology questions focusing on prediction systems. So we will try to be as general as possible without going too much technical on these topics. So having a brief idea on this topic will definitely help us in exam perspective. The relevant syllabus is given here for your reference. See, cyclone Nivar is the third one to make landfall in India this year. Earlier we had Amphan, which is extremely severe cyclone, formed and proceeded to West Bengal in the month of May, followed by cyclone Nisarga on Maharashtra coast in June. And remember that both these cyclones, Amphan and Nisarga, caused extensive damage and were said to be responsible for more than 100 deaths. However, this Nivar cyclone caused relatively fewer damage to life and property compared to previous cyclones. So what is the reason for this reduced damage to property and lives? According to the author, the reduced damage is largely due to forecasts issued by IMD, that is Indian Meteorological Department. See, we all know that IMD is National Meteorological Service of the country and principal government agency mandated to warn against severe weather phenomena like tropical cyclones, heavy rains, snow, cold, heat waves, etc. Simply put, all meteorological service in India is taken care by IMD. See, in 24th November Hindu News Analysis, we have said that IMD is one of the 6 regional specialized meteorological centers and concerned with issuing advisories and naming of tropical cyclones in northern Indian Ocean. So we have said that 13 countries in northern Indian Ocean will recommend names for tropical cyclones. So for all these 13 countries, IMD will give warnings, forecasts for tropical cyclones. And coming to today's discussion, for the analysis and prediction of tropical cyclones, IMD uses a complex and integrated approach which includes blending of conceptual, dynamic, statistical models, hydrological data, technology and expertise. So we have seen in many movies wherein whenever they talk about some weather, they will put a very big computer and they will be showing a lot of graphs, a lot of statistics predicting the data. So in this regard, IMD uses a decision support system wherein a digital environment is used to plot and analyze different weather parameters, satellite, radar and numerical weather prediction data. So what happens is, we take data from different sources and using computer technologies, we will develop various patterns of weather. So all these systems together produce high quality analysis and forecasting of cyclones. Additional help is taken by IMD from radar network of neighboring countries, satellite imageries and analysis and forecast products from various national and international centers. If you see this picture, this is for Nivar cyclone. Clearly they have given at what time which area is going to be affected. And this green area is called cone of uncertainty. So this entire green area is vulnerable area and this red line is the most affected area due to Nivar cyclone. So according to IMD, if a depression means low pressure area. If a depression with maximum surface wind of 17 to 27 knots forms over northern Indian Ocean, a cyclogenesis is said to have occurred. So simply put, if a depression, a low pressure area wherein winds converge at speeds of around 17 to 27 knots, IMD says that okay, cyclone is going to form. And if speeds further increase, it then forms depression, deep depressions, cyclonic storm, severe cyclonic storm, etc. So these prevailing environmental conditions like sea surface temperature, ocean thermal energy, humidity, upper level divergence, low to upper level winds and many other factors are considered for predicting cyclogenesis. See, on 23rd November we have said that what are the different factors which cause tropical cyclones. For example, we have said that a temperature around 27 degrees centigrade is most suitable for cyclone formation. So using these real-time conditions over sea and land, IMD will predict the formation of cyclones. And author says that over the years, India's ability to track the formation of cyclones has improved significantly. And one reason is usage of Doppler weather radars. So this is an electromagnetic system used to detect the location and distance of an object from the point where radar is located. It works by radiating energy into space and monitoring the echo or reflected signal from the objects. See, for example, if you have watched Ghazi Attack movie, in that movie the submarine will send some signals and depending on the receiving time of the echoes of these signals, they will say that the enemy is at this distance or enemy is moving with this speed. So this concept is used in Doppler weather radars. And along with Doppler weather radars, IMD is also using ocean buoys that can track changes in ocean sea surface temperatures. We said that surface temperatures of sea is very important in forming of cyclone. So real-time finding out of these temperatures will help IMD to predict the cyclones. And for this, I am going to talk about one more movie. There is a movie called Battleship in Hollywood. In that movie, the naval force uses these buoys to find out the presence of enemy. Then author tells that Bay of Bengal is 3 times more likely to generate cyclones compared to Arabian Sea. Even in news, we all see that cyclones in Bay of Bengal are very common compared to Arabian Sea. Why? See, sea surface temperatures and humidity play a very important role in cyclone formation. So Bay of Bengal is more likely the target because it gets higher rainfall and also the slow winds around it keep temperatures relatively high. So these conditions help the formation of cyclones. Additionally, Bay of Bengal has constant inflow of fresh water from Ganga, Brahmaputra rivers, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri. This means that the bay's surface water keeps getting refreshed, making it impossible for the warm water to mix with the cooler water below. So this keeps ocean warm and makes it ideal for depression. Depression means low pressure. On the other hand, the Arabian Sea receives stronger winds which dissipates the heat, and the lack of constant freshwater supply helps the warm water mix with cool water from below, reducing the temperature. So when temperature is low, automatically cyclone forming conditions will also be not encouraging. So we can say that Bay of Bengal has high sea surface temperature, weak vertical mixing of ocean, huge perennial freshwater influx from Himalayan rivers, and slow wind motion in comparison to Arabian Sea. So these are some of the reasons why cyclones are more frequent in Bay of Bengal compared to Arabian Sea. So in today's discussion, we have seen how IMD is predicting tropical cyclones in Indian Ocean and also why cyclones are more frequent in Bay of Bengal compared to Arabian Ocean. This is all about the discussion of this news article. Let us move on to next news article discussion. This news article, how China is controlling COVID-19. See, even today many countries including India are struggling to contain COVID-19. But quite surprisingly, the place where virus originated, that is China, has successfully contained it. So we all know that ongoing this COVID-19 originated in Wuhan, that is China, but the world's most populous country with more than 140 crore population has been successful in containing the virus spread. This news article explains how China returned to normalcy while many countries are even today struggling to contain COVID-19. So we are going to discuss different strategies used by China which can be used in our mains answer writing in the regard of prevention of global pandemics. The article says that life in China has broadly came back to normalcy. People are back at work, schools and colleges have opened. But still, there is skepticism about China hiding the real situation, especially the total number of mortalities, that is deaths and cases. We cannot forget Dr. Li Wenliang, who died after contracting the virus while treating patients in Wuhan. He was treated as a rumor monger when he came out first telling that virus could be deadly. But then no one paid attention to him, and as a result, entire world is suffering now. Not just that, the article says that as per official data, China has recorded only around 86,000 cases and 4,600 deaths. These unreliable statistics must have undercounted the initial cases and deaths during early outbreak in Wuhan. And it is also known that China will never give its official statistics. Even then, how did China manage to prevent the outbreak in Wuhan and Hubei provinces from spreading across the country? So the author says that lockdowns, mass testing, contact tracing and mask use helped China to tackle the virus. See, China has ordered stringent lockdown of the entire province of Hubei from January to April 2020. A complete lockdown. There were even reports that people suffered due to shortage of food. This, along with equally stringent national lockdown in several provinces, was the major strategy that helped to control the spread of infection in China. But if you come to India, the lockdowns were not stringent. We have seen multiple people roaming, doing rallies like Go Corona Go in the wake of COVID-19. But it is not just about strict lockdown. The Chinese authorities also implemented world's most expansive test and trace system. This is what helped in bringing cases through local transmission down to zero. Such a massive contact tracing was helped by technology, mandatory health apps, and most importantly by the massive network of healthcare workers and volunteers. And remember, this cannot be replicated in democratic countries because in China, the surveillance of public can be at extreme level. Even when government came up with Arogya Setu app, many opposition parties cried foul that this will impinge the privacy of individuals. China has also been stringent on international travel, both in terms of limiting the number of flights and ensuring mandatory 14 days quarantine for international travelers. It even went to the extreme of selective repatriation of its own citizens living abroad. But if you come to India, there were many cases wherein international travelers used tablets to bring down the temperatures and evaded mandatory quarantine period. And as a result, the cases increased exponentially. The next important step was enforcing near universal mask use. For this also, they have used cameras which can recognize people who are not wearing masks, and immediately they were either given punishment or fine. But in India, today most of the people are not wearing masks. Author says that mandatory and universal mask use has been crucial in containing the virus spread. The single-party dominated surveillance state was also a blessing in disguise for China. It helped China to implement stringent zero infection strategies. As said before, measures like strict lockdown, quarantine for asymptomatic cases, and mass testing are very difficult to enforce in democratic countries like India. This is all about the discussion of this news article, wherein we have talked about different strategies used by China in containing the COVID-19. Let us move on to next news article discussion. This news article talks about Silver Line project. Some of you might know about this. This is a Kerala government semi-high-speed rail project. If you remember, in 2019 GS3, the first 10-mark question is, what is Cyber Dome? Which again is a government project of Kerala. So in this context, we'll have a very basic idea on what is Silver Line project. So today's news article is about a reply from Kerala government to Niti Aayog regarding the proposed 530 kilometers semi-high-speed rail in Kerala. Actually, it is awaiting clearance from central government. The project is estimated to cost around 63,000 crores. So in its reply, Kerala government has informed Niti Aayog that the project is viable, feasible and reasonable. See, we all know that Kerala is a small state with the Kasaragod district in the north and Trivandrum in the south. So the north-south length is around 560 kilometers. But due to excessive number of level crossings, sharp curves, the fastest train takes about 12 hours for travelling from northernmost part of Kerala to southernmost part of Kerala. So 560 kilometers, 12 hours, so it means just 45 kilometers per hour. So the existing railway network does not support faster travel. So for this reason, government has decided to build a semi-high-speed rail corridor, which is called Silver Line Corridor. So this 530 kilometers Silver Line Corridor connects Kasaragod in the north and Trivandrum and will have an operating speed of around 200 kilometers per hour. In our current trains, the operating speed is around 130 to 150 kilometers. So this will ease the transport between north and south ends of the state and reduces the total travel time to less than 4 hours compared to present 10 to 12 hours. So the project will be implemented by K-Rail, that is Kerala Rail Development Corporation, which is a joint venture company of Government of Kerala and Ministry of Railways. Some of the important features of this project include substantial reduction in road accidents due to decongestion on roads, savings in fuel consumption and reduction of pollution since the power supply will be 100% solar and other renewable energy sources. Last mile connectivity by providing cab feeder services, shared services, e-bus services, thereby promoting last mile economy and obviously lot of employment for a big scale project like this. So these features can be used for any transport development project. So whenever if you have to write any significance of transport development projects, you can write these features, because most of the road and rail projects are mostly about traffic reduction, speed of travel, and obviously pollution, and lastly the boost in economy. So these are the important features of Silver Line project. See, we all know that the bullet train project is under process connecting Mumbai and Ahmedabad. Speed of bullet train will be around 300 km per hour. So compared to that, trains in this project will move at speeds of around 200 km per hour. Because of this reason, we call it as semi-high speed rail project. So this is all about the discussion of this news article. Just have a brief idea what is Silver Line project. If at all any question comes, we can answer it. Let us move on to practice questions discussion session. Consider the following statements. Two statements are given here and we are supposed to identify correct statements. Statement 1. Sea surface temperatures and humidity are major factors involved in formation of tropical cyclone. Yes, statement 1 is correct. Statement 2. Low sea surface temperature and high vertical mixing of ocean water due to huge perennial freshwater influx from Himalayan rivers are some of the reasons for more frequent cyclones in Bay of Bengal. This statement is incorrect because Bay of Bengal has higher sea surface temperature, weak vertical mixing of ocean, huge perennial freshwater influx of Himalayan rivers in comparison to Arabian Sea. So it is not low SST, it is high SST, and not high vertical mixing of ocean water, it is low or weak vertical mixing of ocean water. So these two are interchanged here. So statement 2 is incorrect. So correct answer is option A, 1 only. What is or are common to the two COVID-19 diagnostic tests known as RT-PCR and RT-LAMP? Three statements are given here. Statement 1. Both needs different temperatures in one cycle. Statement 2. Both requires deep freezer for storing reagents used for testing. Statement 3. Both have specificity and sensitivity of 95%. This question looks quite technical, but here is the trick. If you know the full form of LAMP, that is loop mediated isothermal amplification. So here isothermal means constant temperature. So in LAMP test, different temperatures are not required. So statement 1 is incorrect. So therefore you can eliminate options A and B. And coming to statement 3, both have specificity and sensitivity of 95%. See, based on common sense, we can say that why do we need two tests if they are having same efficiency of 95%? So statement 3 is incorrect because RT-LAMP has sensitivity of 98.7% and specificity of 100%. So statement 3 is also incorrect. So you can eliminate option C as well. So correct answer is option D, none of the above. Automatically statement 2 is incorrect. Both requires deep freezer for storing reagents used for testing. Statement 2 is incorrect because in RT-LAMP, reagents are to be stored at 4 degrees centigrade. So an ordinary fridge is enough, while deep freezer is required for RT-PCR because reagents need to be stored at minus 20 degrees centigrade. Which of the following statements is correct with reference to Silver Line project recently seen in news? Option A. It is a project of Government of India to connect the Western India with Eastern India through a network of express highways. No, this is incorrect. Option B. It is a semi-high speed rail project proposed by Kerala government. Yes, the statement B is correct. Statement C. It is a broad gauge corridor under construction that will connect the national and business capitals of India. See, option C talks about dedicated freight corridor. Option D. It is a World Bank GEF UNDP assisted sustainable urban transport project of Union Government of India. No, this is also incorrect. So the correct answer is option B. With reference to commercial crew program, consider the following statements. Statement 1. It aims to develop and operate a new generation of spacecraft and launch systems capable of carrying crews to low Earth orbit and the International Space Station. Yes, the statement 1 is correct. That is the objective of commercial crew program. Statement 2. It is a joint initiative of European Space Agency and Indian Space Research Organization. Statement 2 is incorrect because it is the initiative of NASA and not of ESA and ISRO. So statement 2 is incorrect. Correct answer is option A, 1 only. With this, we conclude today's news analysis. If you find this session resourceful, like, share and comment on today's video and subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy's YouTube channel.